So this video is about the scale parameter, which is the first of three considerations to keep in mind when preparing outlines to feed into Shape Genie. The first question to ask is, before you even extract outlines, are your images scaled appropriately? And when I say scale, what I mean is magnification. Take these three cars, for instance. They are identical cars. The only difference is that they are at three different magnifications or three different scales. Now, if you wanted to measure the shape of this front window, you know that it should be the same because they're from three identical cars. However, because these cars are not scaled to the same magnification, Shape Genie will give you different readouts for each of the three. So it's important to scale the images that you are comparing to be at the same magnification. Second question to ask is, when do you not need to scale an image before extracting outlines? And the answer is when you know that the magnification between images is the same, because dimension is not the same as magnification. For example, look at these two images below. Panel A is clearly smaller in dimension, that is width and height, than is panel B. However, the magnification can be the same. You know that because if this red line right here in panel A is 2 inches, and this red line of the same distance is also 2 inches in panel B, then the two images are at the same magnification. In this case, you can just outline the shapes of interest and run them in Shape Genie. Now, why is this important? It's important because if you study images archived by somebody else or a collaborator sends you images, they may have used a dimension and magnification that's different than what you're used to. So it's important to understand magnification between different sets of images. Because for these two images, if you resize panel A to be the same dimensions as panel B, then what you're doing is you're altering the information in panel A, because the magnification is the same between the two. The third question to keep in mind when talking about scale is, when should you scale, the outlines to be similar despite the magnifications of the original image being different? And the answer is that when you want to compare shape apart from size. Now, this is something very special to Shape Genie, because with area and volume, it is impossible to compare shape apart from size, because the moment you resize an object, you change its area and its volume. But with Shape Genie, it is possible. Take panel A and B, for example. They are both of different dimensions, that is height and width, and different magnifications, because here, this 2-inch line in panel A is actually around 4 to 5 inches in panel B. But even though the data is different in both dimension and magnification, it doesn't mean you can't compare the shapes within these two images. Take, for example, panel C. So panel C are outlines of the rocks in panel A and panel B. But what I've done is I've found the longest length within them, also known as the longest aspect, and I've rotated both vertically, and then I resized both objects to be the same height based on the dotted line, the longest aspect. And you know they're the same height because they fit in the same rectangle. In this case, Shape Genie can compare the shape of both rocks, even though the rocks came from images that are of different dimensions and magnifications. But when you do this resizing, you must maintain the aspect ratio between width and height. Because if you don't, what happens is you turn a square into a rectangle. That's what happens when you don't maintain the aspect ratio when you resize a square. So this is something very special to Shape Genie, but it only works if you maintain the aspect ratio and find an objective way to standardize the shapes of the objects that you are comparing.